tail. Ever done a hexagon cardigan? It is exactly what it says. You make 2 hexagons that are a little on the wonky side, and then, because they won't lay flat, they have like a little bit of an extra ruffle. And then you put these 2 together and you have a cardigan. So I'm using a 5.5 millimeter hook with foam over it so that my hands don't hurt after a while. I'm using the same yarn I used for the granny square pinafore dress, overalls dress. Royal Batik or Batik by Zeeman. It's 100% acrylic and it's color 12. That's what it is, color 12. Okay, make a slip knot. Make 4 chains. Slip stitch into the first chain that you made. Then yarn over into that circle of chains, into that space. Pull up a loop. You have 2 loops on your hook. You yarn over and pull through those 2. Then you split your pants. These are your pants. Go ahead and put your hook into that second loop. Yarn over and pull up until you have 2 more loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through 2. That's stacked single crochets. Yarn over and make a double crochet. Yarn over, make another double crochet. So now you have the equivalent of 3 double crochets in that first 4 chain loop. And the whole time you're doing this, make sure that you're crocheting over your tail, because your tail is going to be able to be cinched tight and anchored down. Okay, so now let's continue. 2 chains. Now we're going to make 3 double crochets in that 4 chain space. And every time you must crochet over your tail. That's your second cluster. Make 2 chains. Make your third cluster. Sometimes I call it a shell. I don't mean to, but it is a very tiny shell of 3 double crochets. So technically it's correct, but let's try to call it a cluster, granny cluster. But if I ever say shell, I mean these 3 double crochets. If I just call a shell. So we're continuing to do granny clusters, followed by 2 double crochets, until we get 6. So we have 4 now. 2 more double crochets. Let's pull it back a little. Okay, I'm going to continue until I have 6 clusters, followed by 2 double crochets. I'll meet you back. Okay, so here is the first row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 clusters with 2 single crochets in between them. Now you're going to slip stitch into the top of your first stitch, whether it's 3 double crochets or stack single crochets like I did. Now we're going to turn it like a book, and there's that two chain space. You want to do your stack single crochet, I call it splitting the pants, and then you finish up with the last stack single crochet. Now do 2 double crochets, two chains, push it down. Every single space here right now is a corner. So you need to put 2 clusters in every space. So that's 3 double crochets followed by 2 chains followed by 3 more double crochets. That's your corner right there. Okay. So you do 2 chains and you put in another corner. There's your first cluster in that corner, 2 chains, and another cluster. Two chains, and another cluster that is a corner. Three double crochets, two chains, and then you continue with that cluster in the same space. 3 double crochets makes that cluster. Two chains, and another cluster in the corner, a brand new corner. Two chains, 3 double crochet there. Okay. There's another corner. I love this pattern. It's so beautiful. Two chains and another corner cluster. A corner of a cluster, two double crochet, and a cluster back in that same space. Two double crochet.
2 double crochet, another cluster in that last cluster. Two double crochet and go into the top of your first stitch of that row. Slip stitch. Cluster, cluster, corner cluster, corner cluster, corner cluster. Just make sure that you've got 2 clusters separated by double crochets, 2 chains. Turn your work. Do your stacked single crochets. I'll link how to do that below. I have a video on stacked single crochets if you want more. Okay, let's finish out the see, this is a side, so you only put in 1 cluster, 2 double crochets. Now here's a corner. So we're going to do another corner, which is cluster, two double crochets, and a cluster. Two double crochets, 1 cluster in there. This is a side, so you just put 1 cluster. 1 granny cluster. Two double crochets, and you do a corner. Wherever you see a corner like that, you make a corner. 1 cluster, 2 chains, and another cluster in the corner space. 2 chains, and here's a side cluster. It looks lonely now. Pretty soon there'll be more side clusters than corners. 2 chains, another corner cluster. It's a cluster, 2 chains, and then another cluster in the same space. Two chains and a side cluster. Okay, we've got 2 more corners to go. Another side, and then I think we'll be done this round. We got to get around here. I'll meet you back. Okay, so we've come around. We've got our last 2 chains. Let's go ahead and slip stitch into the top of the stitch. And I'm just going to check before we go any further it is ruffling, and that's what it's supposed to do. Trying to get these ends out of the way. Okay, make sure you've got a corner in every corner. Okay. It has to be 2 clusters in every corner. You should have 6 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 1 single cluster in your sides. Okay? You're going to continue to do this until you get the point to point that is the width of the diameter of your arm. So you go, you see what I did there? This is how you start a row. You finished it here, turn it like a book, go into the space, yarn over and pull it up. You've got 2 loops on your hook, finish it like it was a single crochet. Now you go into the pants, you split your pants. This is the pants, 1 and 2. These 2 stitches that are coming down. Go in the middle, and you come out the side. You don't go all the way through. Yarn over and pull up. Finish it like a single crochet. That's why they're called stacked single crochets. You can do that indefinitely. What we're going to do here is finish off with 2 double crochets, 2 chains, and then we're going to go into our corner. If you want, you can put stitch markers in your corners. That way you can crochet as fast as you want. You know you need to stop and put in your corner cluster, because you could easily just blow past it and put only 1 cluster in and not realize it until you've come around again and you're wondering, why is my hexagon not folding right? You have to have 6 corners, 6 points to make this work. Now, this is a full side here. Now it's 2 side clusters. But don't forget your 2 chains. 2 chains, 1 cluster on the side. Two chains. 1 cluster. They're so cute and feisty when they're little. Two chains. Now you're on a corner. So this cluster, 2 chains, and 1 more cluster in the same space. Two chains, and here is a single side cluster. Two chains, another single side cluster. Two chains, a corner cluster. A granny cluster, 2 chains, and a granny cluster in the same space. Another side cluster after 2 chains. Two chains. Oops, I went too quickly. I didn't finish it. Didn't finish my cluster. 2 chains. Another side cluster. Two chains. A corner cluster. I'll meet you when we get to the end. Okay, so I've done another row, or a round, and as you can see, it's very roughly. You see how it's really pulling up peaks here? That's what you want. You want it to do that because you want to fold it like that. Okay? And it will eventually be, when you have the other one, it will be this sweater. Like that. There's your sleeve. You sew along the top, and you sew along the back to the other half, and it opens up like a cardigan. So that's why they call it the hexi cardi. So please continue with this until you have the measurements for the entire circumference of your arm at the top, because you want to be able to fit up from your armpit to the top of your shoulder. So you have to be able to measure the whole thing. So that point to point has to be able to fit this area of your body. And this is half that goes around your torso. So this is the other half. So this is half of your torso. So those are the measurements that you have to have between point to point. If you have your arm measured the way you like it, and you don't want this to get any wider, you don't want like a bell sleeve, then you can stop hexagons, and then you add rows in the back, and then you add rows along the front, just to make it fit your torso. And you can make this skinny and this wider without increasing both. But that's the minimum. The minimum is to be able to fit over your shoulder and from your shoulder to your armpit. But this is just an example to get you started. Okay, so I have finished the sleeve as wide as I want it to be, so that it'll fit my shoulder to armpit measurement. And this is where I left off on my last row. So what I want to do is I want to fold the half of the hexagon so that the seam is on the bottom of the arm. Because when you look at these, you can see that, look, the gold goes up and then comes back, the orange comes up and it comes back. So it kind of creates a seam on where you are leveling up and turning your work. So you want to put that on your armpit. That's the bottom of the arm. So that's where I'm going to cut right here. I'm just going to cut that where I left off. This will save you some yarn as well if you only go on the hexagon until your arm measurement is good. Okay? There. So then I've put a stitch marker in the middle of the sleeve, right here. at the end where the opening, where my hand comes out, between there just to keep it together, and then halfway here. This will be your last section so that you have a little bit of a fold down for the neck. So do this on both panels so that you're ready to start putting them together. And the body is just folded down here. So I will meet you back after we get both of these ready to start putting them together. Okay, so I have finished both of my hexagons. I've connected them along the top of the sleeve unpinned. So this part right here can fold down and be like the neck area. Okay, so one of these two will be the back, and the same with the other one. We'll just bring that over and see how they connect. So here's the neck and the shoulder of this piece. So put that together, and then these two will connect in the back. This is where they will connect. So what I need to do is, I know I need to add an extra row along the back and the front to make the body wider. And this is the front and back. And at this point I'm not sure which is which. I'll decide that once I get this finished. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go down around the base and up the back, and then down, around, and up the back. Just because I want to add a couple of rows to the middle so that it fits around me. Because my arms are smaller than my back and my torso. So here we go. We're just going to do a slip stitch, then we're going to go back into the hole on that corner and do our standing or stacked single crochets. You could do a standing one too, standing double crochet, or just 3 chains, whatever you want to do. And I'm just crocheting around my tail a little bit too. So I just do one cluster, because I'm not increasing up at the top here. I'm just increasing this side. So I'm moving in this direction. This direction. So the pattern is the same as before. A cluster is 3 double crochets, and you're separating it by 2 chains. So just start at the top and go all the way down, go around the bottom. You have your 2 corners, and you go at the top, and then do a cluster at the end. I will meet you there. Okay, so I have gone down the back or front, going around the bottom here, going around here, and I do the corners like you normally would do in a corner. So now I'm at the top again, and I measured it, and it's not quite what I want it to be, which is half of the circumference of my waist. So when you measure this, it's point to point, this has to be half the circumference of your waist. So I'm not ready to stop adding on, so I'm going to turn this, because when we're at the end of a row, we turn it. Let me just move this out of the way. Okay, so yeah, that's what happens when you don't turn it like a book. The yarn gets in the way. Okay, so there's the last stitch that I just finished. I'll go back into it, yarn over and pull up that loop, and then finish it like a single crochet. Now we split the pants and pull up that loop, and then we finish it like a single crochet. So that's your stacked single crochet. Okay, and it is equivalent of 2 chains. Okay, I'm going to do 1 chain just to give it a little bit of a turn, just a little bit of breathing room, and then we're going to do your 3 double crochets. Okay, so this is the granny stitch, and this will be where you will anchor it coming back if you need to do another full row around. 2 chains and then a cluster. Okay, and you go back around as you were. The only thing different was this turn right here. That was the only thing that was different from before. It's basically giving yourself that height, and then just a little bit to go over, which is 1 chain, and then go into your pattern, which is cluster, 2 chains, cluster, 2 chains, cluster, 2 chains, corner, and then all along the bottom from here to here, and then back up again. And I'll meet you back. Okay, so I have come around to the end, and you can see that it has the cluster that we started with before. So we need to, I think I'm just going to do one chain instead of 2 at the after the end. It just doesn't look quite right when you have the 2. It looks like the space is just a little too big. So yeah, just the one chain. And then let's measure it and we'll decide if we want to turn our work. Okay, so I'm going to go another row around until this is half the circumference of the largest part of my torso. So I'm just continuing to make it wider and to make it longer, which are 2 things I like. I like it longer and I want it to be loose. Okay, so I'm on this last stitch that I just did, the double crochet. I'm going back into, actually here I'm going to do a standing single crochet into the space, and then split the pants and do another standing single crochet. And then I'm going to do 2 more double crochets to finish that cluster. Okay. So if it ended with just a single double crochet, you want to start with a cluster. Then 2 chains, and then you make a cluster, and you continue that all the way around until you get to the end. Now you can make this whatever size you are, but now you know how to add rows in the middle so that it fits around your body. And if you don't want it to be a long coat, like I like a longer coat, you don't have to even go around and then, you know, come back and go back up the side. You could just go back and forth a couple of times, and on the other side back and forth a couple of times until your bottom is, you know, the width that you need it to be, which is half your torso size. So that's something that you could think of if you really want a short kind of cropped looking cardigan. This is completely customizable to make it the way you like to wear your clothes. I did 3 rows to add on the front, back, and at the bottom. I'm going to stop here, continuing to add on, and I'm going to close the arm at the top. So I'm going to finish this corner, and I'm just going right into it. Let's do 2 chains. and continue with cluster, 2 chains, here's the cluster, and so this is how you go into the side. Did you see how that just went along? And now you're working on the live edge again. But here, as you can see, this was a side, and this was the side. So I went around, and now it's on the standing edge. When I get to here, I'll show you what I'm planning on doing when I get to this first stitch marker. Okay, so I have crocheted along the edge here, and when I get to this stitch marker, I'm just going to ignore it. So you do your 2 chains after your cluster, and then here's the cluster. Just ignore the stitch markers as if they weren't there. That's it. Just keep going till you get to the end of the top of the sleeve. I will meet you back when we get there. Okay, so I've come along the top, and I've unhitched it at the opening because I want a little room to breathe. Okay, so at the end of the cluster on this end, this is where the wrist comes out on the sleeve. This is the part where your hand comes out. Just do a chain stitch and then do 2 double crochets. Two chains, and then 2 double crochets back into the space. Okay, this is how I'm turning the corner because I am making that ruffled edge like I had on my pinafore dress. Okay? Now remember, you don't do anything other than go straight back in again with a double crochet, another double crochet, 2 chains, and 2 more double crochet. Okay, do you remember that? If you haven't seen that video, I'll link it below. This is the matching companion piece that goes with that dress. Two chains and 2 double crochet. So this gives you a cute little edge on your sleeves. Okay. So I'll meet you when we get to the other side of this sleeve, around the hem. Okay, so I've come around, and this sleeve has its edging. I put in the last split shell there, because when you do a join as you go, you have to give up one of the stitches, so, and turn it into a slip stitch. So instead of the chain, just going to do that slip stitch right there, and then we finish doing our granny cluster to turn the corner, which is 3 double crochets into that end space. And then we did 2 chains here on this side in between. So on this side we're going to do 1 chain and 1 slip stitch. Then you do your cluster back onto your side that you're working on. Okay?
So this is a join as you go technique modified for this pattern that has 2 chain stitches between the clusters. Now you could do your slip stitch first and then do your chain, but I'm doing the chain right after the cluster, and then I'm doing the slip stitch into that space, just like that. And then going back into cluster mode. So it's still 2 stitches in between every cluster, but one of them is now a slip stitch to connect it. That's it. That's how you put the sleeve together. And you can take the stitch markers out as you go, or you can take them out all at once. However you want to do it, it's up to you. I leave this one in, and that's why I chose a locking one, because this is where you have to stop. You have to stop connecting them. And then you will finish this out all by itself. And look, see, it's just waiting for its other half of the cluster. And then we will be done with this panel. So, I will meet you at the end. Okay, so I've come to the last connection. You can see this is the one place that we have the last stitch marker. So I made my cluster, I did my single chain there. Here's my slip stitch. And let's take the stitch marker out. And from now on, we just work in this side of the work, just the side that's on our side. Okay, and we go back to the pattern, which is the 2 chains, and then the cluster. Two chains, 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 and then connect the corner. And I'm going to cut it. Alright, so now this sleeve is connected. And then you have this opening. Whichever side you decide to be the front or the back, it's up to you. But this is ready to go. So I just need to do the same thing I just did here, adding the extra rows around and around, and then until it's the body and the bottom are longer and wider. But yep, here we go. We're going to start it on this side and go down and around and up and back and around and around. I think I ended up doing 3 extra rows on mine. So that is what we'll do here. Remember, our measurement is from point to point, half of your torso. That's what you want.
So I will meet you back when this is all done, including the top of the sleeve, the ruffle edge, and the join as you go. I will meet you back. Okay, so I have put the ones that I've decided to be the back. I've just loosely stitch markered them together. And I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to go down, and I'm just going to do a slip stitch so it'll be as quick as possible. You may want to do a like a running stitch with a needle. You can do that if you want. That's not what I'm going to do. So let me slip stitch the back together, and I have right sides together so that the seam will be on this side. And I have a lot of, looks like I have a ton of threads to hide. Can you hear my kitty? He's always hungry anytime I start talking. So there, just did a slip knot on it, and then I did a slip stitch, and now we're just going to do these stitches 1 to 1. And I'll meet you back when this is done. Okay, so I have put the seam down the back of the middle. I did slip stitches on the granny clusters, and then in the two chain stitch spaces I just did a single crochet. I did 2 single crochets in each one, just like that. So this is the inside, and I tried it on, and it looks like I may have to slip stitch this shoulder area closed for about probably three stitches, maybe 2. But yeah, I need to close this up because this area is way too wide now, and it's trying to fall off of my shoulders. So I'm going to slip stitch these together here and here. I'm just going to do these 2, I think. This one and this one right here. And then I'll do 2 on this side together. It'll also, I think, reinforce it so that it's a little bit sturdier at the top. And how I'll do that is I will start here. With a slip stitch. And then a single crochet. And then a slip stitch in the 2 single crochets, and then slip stitch these 2 granny clusters together. Okay, and do that for this amount. I think I'll see how it fits. Along.
long tail, just in case I need to do some more. Okay, and then I'm going to do that on the other side. And remember, I'm doing this is the inside. Because there's the seam on the back. Okay, so we're going to start here where we left off. We do the 2 single crochets. Do a slip knot and then a slip stitch, single crochet, and then a slip stitch, I gotta get this out of the way. Okay, so I did 2, just like this side. I put those 2 together, and then on the last one I pull through like this. Make a long tail. Pull that through. And I'm going to go try it on. Okay, it fits pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a row all the way around of the trim that has that ruffled edge. So I need to find find one side and I guess I'll start in the middle here. Yeah, I'll just start in the middle, but I need to start on the right side. I gotta face the right side. So here we go. This is where it'll start. I have so much extra yarn. All of these ends. Look at that. I could make a whole ball of yarn with all of these ends. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start making an edging that goes around with that split shell ruffle. Okay, so let's start here in this space. And we'll do a slip stitch. And we will level up with stacked single crochets, a double crochet, and kind of push that over a little bit. Do 2 chains, 2 double crochets to finish that split V shell. Okay, into the next space, do a split V shell, 2 chains, 2 double crochets. Okay, we'll do that all the way around. We'll even do the corners that way, and all the way down to the bottom, the front, and the sides. I'll meet you back when it's all done. Crochet your way today, because it's the only time we have. I'll see you next time.